Well, hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to present Dion McCormick, no relation, who is our lead solutions engineer. Also joining us is Sarah Mitchell, head of documentation here at Alpha. Today's session, Dion will be giving you a demonstration, I believe, on the details behind generating web services from Xbasic, but he's also here to answer your questions. So go ahead and type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. So let's get started. Hello, Dion, are you there?
Yes, sir. How am I sounding?
You're coming through loud and clear, thanks.
All right. Now, not to scare everybody, I'm going to put a picture on the screen.
Oh
Don't get
boy.
startled. I really should have a countdown saying, either turn off your monitor or it's about to come up from there.
Beware.
So, hold on one second. I'm gonna put you on hold for 1 second. I got to just adjust my microphone real quick.
Yep.
Okay, there. I'm back. I apologize about that for everybody. Hey, thank you so much for joining us. We had a real fun session last week, and what we're going to do is follow on with that information today. Also, I have to apologize to my associate, Sarah. She had put together something that was fabulous to show, but we just didn't have enough time to fit it in. And it had to do with doing using our built-in graphing and charting technology. So I kind of focused on how you could use web APIs to integrate with third-party package, but obviously Alpha has a very robust built-in capability. So with that, I'm going to do some prep stuff, but I'd love to have Sarah spend a few minutes showing her work, because I think you'll find it very, very valuable. And then we can dive into a little bit more detail on the web services. Does that sound okay, Dave and Sarah?
Sounds good to me if it's okay with Sarah. Sarah, are you there?
Yeah, she probably needs to bring up the screen or so, but I've got a few announcements before we get started there. So I'm going to assume a yes and keep moving across. So I know, sorry, deal. So I noticed my #1 page that I always have open, the Alpha Software documentation site, one of my favorite sites of next to Google. That's my second most used site nowadays. So really great work by Sarah and the team. So wanted to follow up. We're literally, let's see, August, September, well, like month and a half, 2 months, closing in.
It's less than 2 months. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if other parents out there, but my kids are going to school next week. A bunch of people are starting this week. So we're back into the school year, which is scary. And actually, the #1 most important thing that I have to share with everybody is that college football kickoff in about 2 weeks, that week. I've already put in my order at Best Buy for the new TV, and I'm doing my part to keep the economy going. And I'm going to do that through the frivolous use of money to watch college football on a large screen TV while expending an enormous amount of money on junk food and barbecue and beer and other things like that. So really looking forward to that. But all kidding aside, we are coming up very close. And we were just doing a review with the team on the venue, and we keep tuning up the agenda. There's some amazing things that are going to be presented there. There are amazing things that are being worked on as we speak right now that will be demonstrated and shown at the DevCon. And these are items you will not want to miss. So I want to encourage everybody to go check it out. It's at alphasoftware.com, DevCon 2018. Great stuff, and we really would love to see everybody there, because it's just an amazingly powerful event, and it's going to set the stage for just an incredible 2019 with all the information you'll get. Also, along with that, Transform Tuesdays are amazing. So if you're involved with Transform, want to know more about that, Dave had an amazing presentation yesterday. Dave, would you like to share just a few moments on what was presented? I thought it was really, really cool.
Dion, I didn't see you there. Were you lurking in the background?
I get the webinar or webcast recordings right after.
I see. Well, that's the way to do it. Wonderful.
I'm a lurker. So
yesterday we covered using the Transform API. For those of you not familiar with Transform, Transform is a product from Alpha Anywhere. It's part of the Alpha suite of products along with Alpha Anywhere. And it is basically right now used for data building, very quickly build data collection applications. And it takes all different kinds of data. You could do barcode scanning and recording and lots of other stuff. But yesterday I showed how to take that data and bring it into Alpha and bring it specifically into Alpha's report writer. And the example that I used was an invoice. So you would fill out an invoice on your phone, and it would print out using the Alpha Anywhere report writer back on the web server side. So it was interesting. If you'd like to see a copy of that, send an email over to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com. I can get you set up with the Transform registration link. I can also point you to the Transform archive, and I think you guys will find it's interesting. It did cover a little bit of Xbasic. It got into some of the JSON functions, if you're interested in that, including JSON flatten, which let us take hierarchical data and flatten it down for use in the report writer. Could also be used to be put into spreadsheets, and there are other uses for that as well. So that was all covered in yesterday's Transform Tuesday.
That's a lot of material. I'll tell you, you crammed it in there.
And crammed it into 22 minutes, so it's a quick watch.
Yeah, making me look like a slacker. And Transform continues to mature. There's some really cool features, capabilities that are coming out in the next month or so. Again, just what I'm seeing is there's kind of a curve where as Transform matures, you can do more and more with the platform. So whereas you would normally use Alpha Anywhere to generate a custom app, which is perfectly okay, more and more there's sort of that spectrum of capability that Transform can fulfill without having to do it. And really exciting, and that's just going to get greater and greater as we go along. So thank you very much. What's great is I believe Sarah is ready to show her amazing work, and I kind of put her on the spot here. I didn't give her a heads up. So if we can go ahead and switch over to Sarah, and I'll put myself on mute and let Sarah, and then when we come back, I'll go ahead and dive into the web API pieces, which is part of this whole agenda.
That sounds great. I'll go ahead and make Sarah the presenter.
Can you hear me?
Sarah, I can hear you coming through loud and clear. And if you want to just click share so we can see your screen. Oh, there it is.
Okay. So some of you may be familiar. We have this example. It was based on a Yahoo API, which Yahoo sunsetted back in 2017. But it was a demo app for displaying this chart here, this stock chart. And I recently updated this to use another API called Alpha Vantage, which does require a API key. But after I did that, I ran across another API, which is free and doesn't rate limit you to 1 call per second, but rather 100 calls per second. And so I spent some time working with this. It's called the IEX Exchange or something like that, and built out a new sample app using ViewBoxes and that chart control. And this is it here in action. This is all live. It's all published on my Alpha Cloud. It pulls from their gainers API, their losers API. And I also added this really cool My Portfolio thing where you can enter in a list. It's got a default set here, but you can come in here and do MSFT, update that list. It goes and pulls down the new data. This is all recent as of, looks like yesterday was the last day that they got information on this. But as I've been working on this, I have been documenting what I've been doing because it's super cool. I didn't have to write a whole lot of code to work with this. I think the most complex thing I did was getting these ticker items into this list. And of course, also this style in the ViewBox over here was a little complex. But if you're interested in playing with this, I have a GitHub account, and I will paste this into the chat window if you want to go fork it or branch it or however it works. But there is a wiki page called How It Works that I've documented everything that's in here so far. And when this is all done, I'm hoping I can get to the point where I've integrated some of our JavaScript charts in here. Because right now this uses just your standard chart control, which is a server-side control, so it has to make a call back to the server to get the data and bring it back down. But if we can change it to use our JavaScript charts, then you wouldn't even have to do that. So once all this data was pulled down, it would conceivably work offline.
Cool.
Very cool. Thank you so much. And I think one of the key things that really struck me when Sarah had given me the demonstration was the use of the ViewBox to create a very powerful visual interface for the user.
And that's what, sorry to interrupt, but if I understand, you you went and took a look at another site and then said, wow, I like the styling of that. Let me see if I can recreate that in Alpha. Is that sort of the
Oh,
process
on the
behind it?
ViewBox here,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
literally went and just stole it off of somebody's website, who I will not
Excellent.
mention here in case somebody from there watches this video at some point in the future.
Okay.
But just a few little like tidbits and details. There are no images in here. The arrow is it's a border. There's this thing you can do with CSS borders, and it's you can draw all sorts of shapes. If you're really into that kind of sadistic work, there's somebody out there did a 3D engine that uses nothing but CSS borders to draw things on the screen, and it is insane. So
Wow.
yeah, the power of style sheets is what's in that language is crazy.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really good talent out there on Upwork, Fiverr that you can dive into to help you out. Because if you're not a CSS person, then there are people you can hire to help you do that. And as you can see, you can create very modern and beautiful interfaces with it. So yeah, if you don't mind me showing the ViewBox, that'd be really
Yeah,
cool.
if you can see that
Yeah, so
component.
this is the
We're
ViewBox
curious.
definition for the data source for that gainers
Okay.
list. And it's just this API endpoint. You can choose REST API now as an option for the data source.
Yeah.
And I just went up here and I copied this off their website. I added this display %true option, which allows me to show this percentage value over here on the side without doing any math in my template. And the sample data, which you see is populated, you need to put sample data in here, but there's this link on the bottom that says make REST call to get sample data, and it will do that. So see,
Cool.
I just updated now, it's CGC.
Wow.
Yeah. And
So
then the
you
rest of
just,
this, the layout,
yeah.
I started with the Genie to get the list layout, and then I converted it over to the freeform editor because I wanted to do some stuff to customize it a little bit. But
Style it, yeah.
yeah, let's see if this works. Preview might not work today.
Yeah,
It's
preview
finicky.
tends to be touchy, I
It's
noticed. So.
finicky. Yeah. If you put something in there that might require the context of a web browser to render, and it doesn't always like that. So
Nice. So for the ViewBox control, basically you found an API endpoint, and then once you enter that API endpoint, you're able to put in sample data by asking Alpha Anywhere to call that API endpoint and pull back the data.
Yep. And then once it has that data, it lists
and
all
it
the
shows you all the fields that you could use.
for you.
Fascinating.
Yep.
Wow. It's really the year of the API, isn't it, Dion?
Yep.
At least the half year, because I was lazy the first half of the year. Slow.
Yeah.
But this is actually very important, if I can reiterate. Again, everything's going to API. And what I'm going to show today is you're going to build your own APIs around Alpha. And so someone else, you could provide them this API and they could build this interface off of your API in a secure way. And more importantly, you'll notice, for instance, how APIs used to be a code-centric exercise. You had to curl Xbasic and do all this stuff. You'll notice now, because Alpha is building in REST API as a type of, almost like a connection string, now more and more, it's like you're building a grid or a list based on a database table. And it really is going a long way towards allowing you to do two things. One is make it easy to connect to REST APIs to consume that data, but also with things like the ViewBoxes to make obviously a very beautiful interface to display that information in your system. And to be honest, you could go to the model where you create your own APIs for your own solution, and then you're building UIs on top of that API. So essentially within your own domain, you're using that methodology. So there's some really cool stuff. There's phenomenal stuff here. So
right. Yeah. And again, when I mentioned that this custom symbol list was probably the most complex thing I did. It's complex because I'd use the batch API and then flatten the JSON they send back into a single array, but that's all documented in here. And there's this post-process function you can use if the data coming back isn't quite right.
Yeah, sometimes the API provides you
some
some metadata, header data that you got to get rid of, and
right. Yeah, or it comes back as XML and the ViewBox wants it in JSON format. And we've got functions that convert XML to JSON. It's very, very fast, very easy.
That is awesome. Since we've got this open, can we ask, I just had a couple questions coming in just about ViewBox controls and list controls in general. And the question is, can you give just sort of a general overview of what you use items for in a ViewBox builder? And for that matter, for the list control, I believe items is an option there. What do they do and why would you want them?
Items add event handlers to elements within your layout. By default, the ViewBox doesn't really have, like, individual fields don't have built-in events. You have to add that into the layout.
Okay.
And
So
it's yeah.
Just interrupt for a second, that when you're typically building out a UX control and you're not using a ViewBox, you're just placing controls, buttons, text objects, whatever. Each of those things, when you build them, will have a set of JavaScript controls that you can use. But the ViewBox builder is a little bit different. They aren't actually controls in them per se, and the reason we did it that way is because we didn't want to add to the DOM. We didn't want to add all of these event handlers to individual items, to keep the ViewBox very, very lightweight, so it could display a ton of data, but without having this huge payload in terms of HTML. So with items, it gives you the on-click events that you'd otherwise be missing because they aren't real objects.
Right, and then this one, that is right. And this one, this AA row one, this one's actually generated for you if you add I think it's called a list container to your ViewBox layout. And then you can come in here and define what happens when that row basically is clicked or double clicked or swiped right
which
here
is
in the items.
Yeah, which is your standard behaviors on most of them, to treat a ViewBox as a list, as a lightweight list.
Yeah, and that A5 item tag, this is maybe more detailed than some people will ever need to know, but these are added using A5 item, which says what handler to call. And then A5 value is what to pass to that handler. So it passes in count, being the row number, and count increments every time another row is rendered in the ViewBox.
And by the way, count is one of the columns, right? Or one of the fields.
No, count is a special, not a placeholder or directive. It's a special thing for client-side templates.
Gotcha. Okay.
It gets incremented every time another row is rendered for the template.
One other question now that we've got this open, and that is that on the ViewBox builder, what's the difference between the preview tab and the preview button at the bottom of the dialog box?
There's no difference. They're the same thing. Clicking the button. If you have the preview pane, show preview pane checked, clicking the button just goes to the preview pane, like this. But if you uncheck it, clicking the button shows it in a pop-up window.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that's all that is. There's no difference. It's the same preview in both cases.
Yep, gotcha. Thanks. And one last question, sort of a general question for either of you. Any estimates on how many API calls per second the Alpha Anywhere server can handle?
Ooh, very good one.
It probably depends on the API call.
Depends on that, and yeah, it's the amount of payload really is going to be a key thing. So if each call asks to return 1 million records, well, you're going to have a pretty slow response time. But if each API call is returning like a small piece of data, like a couple letter characters or numbers or something like that, you'll get much higher. A key consideration for that is that with the IAS server, you get a lot more bandwidth than you do with the standalone, just because you have more cores working and things like that. And then obviously the Alpha Cloud, infinite, because basically Alpha Cloud can spin up more and more resources to support that incoming demand, and it will take care of loading that on the different servers essentially in the background. So, so if you have a really, really high capacity situation, cloud's going to be the way to go, because it's going to automate all that provisioning for you. So you don't even, as your requirements grow, it can spin up new servers to handle that demand. Or you can do things like schedule, like if you know that, in the morning people do all their API calls, they're updating their mobile platforms, then you can have more servers available and then spin them back down so you're not using resources during the day. So there's a lot of fun things you can do with that.
Yeah, that's right. Very cool. And one final and fairly easy question: is there a separate license for Transform than for Alpha Anywhere? There is a package of Alpha Anywhere that does include some Transform licenses, but they are in fact licensed separately. So they're separate pieces that you may want to use together or independently when you put together a solution. So you can find out about that pricing and so on at transform.alphasoftware.com.
Okay, thank you so much.
Wow, we're already 20 minutes into it. We haven't even started your demo. This
I know.
time
I'll
is
dive into it.
flying.
I know.
Why don't we go ahead and make you the presenter? Thank you very much, Sarah, for showing all that off. That's very cool.
You're welcome.
All right, Dion, back over to you.
There we go. You should see the year of the API.
The year of the API. I see it.
Okay, I'm all about honesty. So
excellent.
Anyway, I'm going to dive right into it. Last week, we really focused on something very fascinating, which was the following. We were able to take, let me see if I have an example of this here. We were able to take and integrate ClickData with both Transform. ClickData is a third-party business intelligence tool, and I want to say thank you to everybody for being very nice to our guests. Nobody, we didn't get any yelling or, Eric really enjoyed the presentation, enjoyed everybody and the questions that he had, and so we want to say thank you. But beyond that, I also showed a quick demonstration of how you could use Alpha Anywhere to create your own API and be able to then use third-party products for that. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to spend a little bit more time today explaining how I built this piece, because I had to kind of rush through it because we were mainly focusing on this piece here. So first, what I want to bring up is a little image here. And this is a little diagram I just put together to kind of give you an idea of what happens. So we have Alpha Anywhere, and built into it, it has a web service technology that keeps maturing very, very quickly. So in our case, I had a database of information, in this case, customer information, and I built an Xbasic class that would then read that information. Now, again, it doesn't have to be a database. This could be business logic. This could be, who knows, anything you really wanted to. It could be DBF tables. It could be anything. But the idea is I have an Xbasic class, and what I do then is I wrap that Xbasic class as a web service. And all that's really doing is basically creating sort of a really, the way I'd consider it is like a special type of A5W page that's perfectly suited to integrate. So it has all the built-in functionality to handle requests coming in, responding to those requests, and doing that. So a lot of the heavy lifting you're going to see in a few minutes is done by Alpha. So you can basically build a web API and publish it in a matter of minutes without having to spend any time doing a lot of complicated aspects. Now, the beauty of that is once you've published your REST API, then you're in a situation where, hey, someone else who's using Alpha Anywhere could call that and be able to access your data securely through this process here. But also, you could use other tools. So if you're working with a client who already has an existing, say, PHP system, and they want to be able to connect to your Alpha Anywhere system and grab some data or things along those lines, any system that can call web APIs can then use this Alpha app server, and it is a industry standard conforming app servers or Alpha app REST service. So therefore, it's going to behave very nicely. It's going to give all the right responses, and it's going to be a beautiful thing. And as I showed also last week, we could use third-party products that have built-in API readers to connect to that data there. So the flexibility is enormous because we have certain customers who actually have multiple applications that they've deployed on Alpha Anywhere. And before they did a lot of the integration at the database level, which is good and it works. But the downside of that is that, if you start changing the database, then it could break things. There's more coordination needed. So we're seeing most of our customers who have multiple sort of Alpha Anywhere applications, for each of their applications, they're starting to wrap each of those applications in a REST service so that when they need to do application to application communication, it's done through a REST service versus, say, custom code or calling directly and doing things at the database level, which makes it much easier to maintain. Plus, they're able to take their existing Alpha solutions and publish them as web services so they can offer new services to their clients, to their third parties, etc. Really, really exciting stuff here. So I want to go through a real quick demonstration to show how I build this Xbasic class, use a lot of the built-in tools for Alpha, publish it, and then exercise it in a matter of 5-10 minutes. So I'm going to dive in and do that. And if you have any questions, go ahead and put them on your go to webinar questions panel, and Dave will be monitoring that, and we'll get to as many as possible as we go through this from that standpoint. So the process, as I mentioned before, is the following. Where did I put that? First step is to build your Xbasic class that actually will provide the JSON data that's needed. You wrap it using our built-in web services API. You deploy it, and then you do your integrations. And the way I'm going to show you this integrate to a third party is actually using the Restlet program in my web browser, so I can show you how it's a normalized API and I can exercise that. Kind of showed you that week before last, but I'm going to show you that again today. So I'm now going to jump in, and I caution for folks with Alpha, this is going to be a little more code-centric, not tons, but a little more code-centric, but you're going to see it's going to be very fast for you to kind of develop these situations. So I'm going to jump over here, jump into my Alpha development environment. So I'm in the Alpha development environment. I'm on the Web Projects Control Panel. So my first step is to create a Xbasic class, and that's going to be the source of my data that I'm going to provide. And by the way, today I'm focusing more on creating data and then exposing it, but these classes can do things like updating and deleting and all these other functions that you would consider to interact with your data. But today it's more of like a read-only interface. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to click New. You'll notice, hey, we've got built-in capabilities. So we have function libraries, modules, but the one I want to focus here is class. So I'm going to create new Xbasic class. And so it creates a new class here. Now you'll see that there's a little piece of information, but there's no sample code here. So I'm going to do a trick. And this is nice because it does a lot of the structuring for me. There's a specific way this Xbasic code needs to be developed. So I'm going to go up here to the Insert button here. And you'll notice here, there's class definition. I'm going to click that and go class definition. And you'll notice that it pasted in basically a very special kind of structure about a class definition. And I'll walk you through that as I go through this. So you'll see it just used some generic stuff here, my namespace and the name of the class. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to first take this namespace, and we'll come back and talk about namespaces a little later, but I'm just going to go alpha, and then I'm going to go customer class. So this is the name of my class, and it's made up of two parts, a namespace and the actual class name. I don't necessarily need that. I could just put in this part right here, but I'll come back later and talk a little bit more of why you'd want to use a namespace. Now you'll notice that it built a sample var in there, but the most important thing I care about right here is this method here. So within this class, it has a single method, and I'm going to change that to say list customers. So what I want to be able to do is when I run this class, I want to be able to call a function in this class. So it's just basically like a special type of function. And when I call that functions, it's going to return a set of customer information in JSON. So I'm going to go here. And the way you do that is when you build the function, you give it a name and then you return the data. So I would put in here my JSON data that would be returned here. Now, in my case, the way I'm going to do this is that I'm going to read a database table of customer information and return that JSON data. So I could set it up, I could write the Xbasic call and everything else to set up a connection to the database, call it. But Alpha has a really cool feature that gets rid of all my programming wants and needs, or takes care of all these problems for me. So I have created my class, I have my function here, and what I want to do now is call the database, return some JSON, and then return it. So I'm going to click here in this open space on line number 15. By the way, if you don't see these numbers on when you're doing Xbasic stuff, you just have to right-click on any white space area and click line numbers, and it will show and hide those line numbers. Pretty handy when you're working with other people here. Okay, so I'm going to go here. I'm going to right-click on the white space, and I'm going to go to genies. So Alpha has a whole bunch of really nice built-in what are called genies that help you write code. We've talked about the curl command to Xbasic, where I can take a curl command and turn that into Xbasic automatically. But there's another really powerful one called Xbasic SQL Actions Code Generator. And this one, when you're doing web APIs, you're going to use this a lot, and it's going to save you an enormous amount of time. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. So again, just to make sure people understood, I right-click here, go to Genies, Xbasic SQL Actions Code Generator. So it brings up my Genie, and you'll notice there's a number of different things. This Genie writes Xbasic to interact with databases. Check out the first one. Query a SQL database to get JSON data. And there's another one for hierarchical, but I'm going to keep it simple today. It also has like update, insert, delete actions. And the really cool thing about it is this is really well-tested code. So I highly recommend you use this because Alpha has already made sure it's bulletproof. So in our case, we're going to query the database and bring back some JSON data. So I want to select that, click OK. Brings up a Genie. This looks very similar if you've done list or grids. I need my connection string. So I'm going to go connection. I'm going to get fields from a table, but I could also create my own custom SQL statement. I'm going to click table name. In this case, I'm using the Northwinds table, so I'm going to click customer here. So I'm just selecting which table I'm getting my data from. I'm going to click field list. I'm just going to click a couple of these fields here. ID through contact title. Very much, if you ever built a grid or list, same kind of functionality here. I could set filtering. I could pass arguments in here, which is really cool. And basically behind the scenes is doing there. So I can go ahead and test this. And you'll see that it basically wrote all the Xbasic to call this database and return it. And each one of these records is a record in the database. And you'll notice it's in JSON format, all done for me. So now I can copy this clipboard, click OK. And by the way, it does that automatically. And now what I can do is I can paste this. And I'm not going to walk you through the code. You're welcome to do that. But here is all the Xbasic call. So basically, it connects to the database, sets up SQL thing, returns it. And here you go on line 41, we have that JSON. So all I'm going to do is say, hey, you know what? I'm going to return from this function JSON. So it's going to, all this code right here is going to call the database, get that out, return it, and put it in a variable called JSON. And here I'm going to then take that JSON and return to list customers. I could, by the way, just say list customers here, but for debugging, it's kind of nice to do it this way. So I'm going to save this. It's called customer class. So I've done it. So step one is building that Xbasic. As you can see, I really wrote zero code. It was more copy paste kind of functionality here. Now I want to test this. So I'm going to go into my code editor here, which is on your control panel. And the way I run this is I just say, and this is just for testing purposes, I dimension an example of my class with alpha customer. And actually it's alpha customer class. Gotcha. And then I do my list customers there. So I'm going to run this little piece of code right here. And you'll see, sure enough, I called my class, called that function. It called the database, brought back the information, and I'm good to go. This is just my, hey, sanity check. Did I make sure my class works properly? Always good. And I can save this for regression testing. So I could have like, compare the data coming back and make sure it's working properly. Okay, so my class is working. It's calling the database. It's returning the data in JSON. So now I'm ready for step two. And step two is wrapping that class using the wizard. And so I'm going to go into the alpha development environment. Going to go to the web projects control panel, and I'm going to go here to the left where it says web services. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new web service because basically if I go to my diagram, I now have this working right here, but I need this piece right here to make it all work. And basically this is what's going to be exposed to the outside world that things can call. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to go into my web services area. I'm going to click new. Notice I can create a SOAP one or a REST. I'm going to be creating a new definition to create a REST service. So the bottom one here. So I'm going to click that button. So the first thing you're going to see is I have a Genie. Wonderful. So you'll see that up top it's saying, okay, you're creating this web service, but you need to tell me which class or classes I'm going to expose through this web service. So I'm going to click Add New Class. You'll notice it brings up a list of my classes. This is the one we just built here, customer class. So now it goes, great, okay, I know I want to build a web service for you using this class. By the way, here are the available methods. So you'll notice that I only have one method in there, but I could have list customers, I could have update customer, delete customer, I could have all these functions, and I want to expose those to the outside world. And you'll notice that it's showing me what is available in that class, in our case, only one. So I'm going to edit this one right here. So I'm going to click on this class here and I'm going to edit the method property. So you'll notice it's in red. that means that it's going to be exposed, but it's really not, the method is not exposed in the service. So I've selected the class, it's shown me what, but you notice I have not exposed this. So if I were to build and deploy this, it would not work. So now I need to click Edit Method Properties. I want to expose this method in the service, and it's the REST verb, and we'll cover this in a future. How do I want to expose it? Sort of how does the web service want to work? In my case, it's a GET, so it's like a GET request from my service. If you're doing things like deleting and updating records, you would use these kind of aspects here, but I'm going to click path. Now, it automatically developed what's called the path, and we'll show you the path in a few more moments, using the method or sort of the function name list customers. But I could modify that if I wanted to give it something nicer. So I could have like an internal name and then give it a nice one there. Now, the last thing, which we're not going to cover today, but is very important, is whether this method is authenticated, meaning that is it just public? If someone hits that, it's going to work. In my case, yes. But I can set up authenticated where and that's a whole session in of itself. What I can do is say when someone calls this web service, they need to provide some security data, and that's very important to make sure only the right people are accessing your web service. But to keep things simple today, I'm just going to leave it as it is. So I've got GET, list customers, and I click OK. You'll notice two things. One, it's now green. The other thing you'll notice that there's a little lock, and it's saying unlocked, which means it is a public service. It is not authenticated. And here is your little legend of what goes on there. Now, one thing that's really fun about Alpha and what the development of this is that I don't have to go through and publish this. Guess what? I can test this right here. So let's check it out down below. I can click Live Test the API, and it opens up a web page for me in the Swagger definition. We've talked about Swagger. It's the standard. So anybody who's doing web API stuff is going to see this, and they're going to immediately understand what it means. It says, oh, here's a web API. You know, it's got a kind of a gobbledygook name right now. That's just because I'm in kind of test mode. But you'll see here are my list of exposed services. Well, I only have one called list customers, and it uses the GET verb. So I can click on that one, and you'll notice it gives me an information here. There's no parameters needed to it. And I can click this try it out. And you'll notice it opens up this button. When I click execute, in a second, there's my information. So this literally in this web page called my new web service, and I'm seeing a set of JSON data come back. Now, another thing that's kind of cool is check this out. It actually told me what the curl command would be to execute this same thing. And again, it's kind of using a temporary publishing, so that's not necessarily, but in the future, what you're going to do is you're going to provide them this documentation to someone who wants to connect to your web service, and all of this will be done for you. So now I know my web service is working. So I'm going to do a couple more things real quick. I'm going to go back in here. By the way, if I want to, I can click Swagger definition, and this is a Swagger definition which I can use to automatically generate documentation based on my API. And this will become very important later on. When you build these web APIs, you want to provide documentation to outside people on how it works. Well, this is an industry standard way to do it. And we'll go through a more extensive documentation on this a little later on there. Notice down here, we could also import something from Swagger. And more importantly, we have our full API documentation, which talks about the API. That's what we just generated here. But also you'll notice here it says open documentation for creating REST APIs. And this takes us to a very well-written documentation talking about what I'm showing you right here. And in fact, I'm going to copy this using a handy dandy. I'm going to go into my web control panel, and I'm going to put it in the chat window. So if anybody wants to check that out and bookmark that, but we have that built into the interface there. Okay. So where are we at? We've created our Xbasic class. We've created our definition. So I can click save, and I'm going to call this customer class. And this is my new web service. So you'll notice it has a A5 SVC. So again, it's kind of like a special A5W page that's available right there. Good. Okay. So we are ready to test this out. So basically I've done, let me go over here. I've done step 1. Created my Xbasic class. 2 here. Now I'm ready to actually test it. Now, in order to test it, I need to publish it. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to cancel out of here. I'm going to publish this to my local web root. So now it's running on my local. If I wanted to, I could obviously click here and say publish, and publish up to my server, and it would put this service up on my service, and it would include my class that drives that service. But I'm going to go ahead and go into my alpha development environment now, or into my web browser, I'm sorry. I published it to my local web app running right here. So now that I'm in here, am I in the right? Yeah, right here. I'm going to open my Restlet service here, which is that program I talked to you a couple weeks ago about what lets me test it here. So you'll see here, this is where I can basically put in that URL of where my service is at. So you'll notice the URL is built with localhost 1580. That's my local machine, and I'm running on port 5080. I published it into the demo web service. So remember, when you do a publishing, and let me just show you that so it's really clear. When you have a publishing profile, you have a target folder on your server where you're putting it. So it's actually on my local machine, but it's in the folder demo web service. When I go here, you'll see, here's my machine, here's demo web service. Now within there is that customer class web service that I built. So if I go back here, you'll notice I have customer class A5SVC right here, and that's what's been there. And then after that is my actual method called list customer. So machine, folder where it's running on the machine, the web service, and then the actual command from there. And I'm going to go ahead and click send. And you'll notice that it sent it. I got a response of 200. Notice I didn't have to write any of that. And this is what came back from that web service call. So now I'm there. I've created my Xbasic class. I've wrapped it as a web service and deployed it. Now anybody with this URL can run that web service. Now, obviously it's running on my local machine, so that doesn't make much sense. So what I would do is publish it to my application server or Alpha Cloud account, wherever it happens to be. And then it would just be the URL for that Alpha Cloud account. And then someone could provide that. And we'll come back and talk about security and other things as we go forward. But we just wanted to share how to do that. So as you can see, if I had not been yakking along all this time, I could literally create an Xbasic class, read some data out of a database, create a web service in about 5-10 minutes, deploy it, and it's ready to go. And most importantly, when I do go through that process, when I create my service class here, I can actually give people the API documentation, either in HTML format or give them a URL, and they would be able to quickly build on top of this and understand how to call this web service and what to expect to get back. And there's a lot of other functionality in there we'll cover in the near future, but that's really the process, is that basically build your Xbasic class. In my case, when I built my Xbasic class, I used my cool Xbasic SQL Actions code generator, which automatically did all the work to grab the data out of the SQL database and turn it into JSON. So notice it saved me a lot of coding, and this code is rock solid and will work great. And then once I did that, I went ahead and went into the web service and created my web service where I pointed at that class. I pointed at the method that I wanted to expose, because I could have multiple ones in there. And then I went ahead and deployed it, and I was good to go. Now I wanted to cover one other thing, then I wanted to answer any questions. Remember when I created my class, I told you that in my case, I used what's called a namespace alpha and customer class. Now the reason we do that is the following, is that the namespace is just a naming convention, which you can pick anything you want. So the benefit of that is that over time, you may have like customer as your class. Well, there might be 20 different companies that are using customer as a class name. And when you go into an alpha solution, how does it know, like you might be using a couple different web services, etc. So what a class allows you to do is just give it a better name so that it is the customer class within the alpha namespace. So you could have Joe's programming customer class. You could have Jim's programming customer class, Jane's programming customer class, and alpha would be able to determine, oh, it's from this class library from this person versus this person, this person. So it's a very good practice to add a namespace, although it's not required, because if you ever end up providing this class, and you can, by the way, you notice you can encrypt it to someone else, then you don't have to worry about your class names conflicting with classes that they may have already created in their environment. And as people adopt this, I anticipate you're going to see more and more alpha developers create these cool class libraries and then provide them to other people, either to interface to their system or allow people to do to provide functionality that they may not have, or just as a community exercise, allow people to do some really cool stuff there. So real quick recap: build your Xbasic class, wrap it using the wizard, deploy it to the server, and then you're off to the races for integration. From a picture standpoint, you'll see that I built my class, I then built my service, and now I can provide the documentation, and other people can connect through Alpha, through third-party products, or even third-party services can all use these functionality. And last week I demonstrated how I went through and built that customer list, or actually it was a list of products. And then within Click Data, I was able to connect there and provide that. Now again, Click Data could have gone directly to the database, but the power of my web service is that if I ever need to change anything here, so long as my web service stays the same, I don't have to ever modify any of this stuff. So that was one of the key things I was talking about, is that if I go in here and modify this database, like let's say my customer table gets segmented into 3 tables or has some changes. Well, if you had a direct integration with this database right here, you may have to go in and change code here. But if you use a web service, so long as your web service still works properly, then any changes behind the scenes, you don't even have to worry about here. So API-centric design is very powerful because it separates what's going on in the back end from the front end. So it allows you to some very powerful, and we'll talk about this in a future session. The other thing that's really cool you can do is what are called mock APIs. So you can define this REST service here. Let's say you hadn't built this class. Maybe this class is complicated. Maybe it's going to take a couple weeks to figure out how I'm going to call this data, do calculations, put the data together, do updates, etc. Well, what you can do, which is really cool, is you can actually define what this web service is with mock data, meaning you can actually create it with mock, showing examples. And so you could be developing in parallel the consumption of this web service while you're building the back end of it at the same time, which has a dramatic impact on the speed of developing projects, because you don't get into the waterfall where you have to create all this before someone can start doing stuff. Like before, you might say, hey, you know what, I can't let you do any development until I get my database design done, because I don't know what it's going to look like. And if I do it now and you start integrating, you may have to redo that. Well, if you say, you know what, I'm going to give you this web service, these are the calls you can make, this is the data you can expect back, and you can actually build this web service with mock data, they can actually be doing development against that. And we're going to come back and show you how you can do that. And it's really, really cool, very powerful stuff. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to Dave and see if we have any questions.
We don't. I guess everything was perfectly clear. I know. What's going on? Not.
I bored them to death.
They're still here.
They're nodding off. Actually, the only question you're going to see is like the letters D, F, and G over and over and over, where their head hit the keyboard when they went to sleep. It's just like, how come there's 1,000 characters coming at me right now?
Exactly. Well, we did get a very cool stuff from someone, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really fun. And as you can see, it really,
it is cool stuff. Yeah.
It uses it really straight. And we'll come back and talk about the authentication, because that's super critical. Obviously, if you've got customer data and other information, you're not going to want to expose that to the world without some security. So we'll be coming back and spending some quality time on the different methods you can use to secure this web service, so that only the people who should have this will get access to it.
Excellent. Someone asked about calling REST APIs from Alpha. I know you've covered this before, but maybe you could just have a quick recap of what we did for calling them from Alpha. Yep.
Absolutely. So let me see if I have an example of that real quick. Let's see. Do I have a web API? Let's see, I'm looking through my examples, see if I have something I can show you. ReqRes. Oh, okay. Well, I can show you a quick example. So let me go ahead and show you how to do that. Rec. What was it? Rec. What did I call that? Was I'm blanking on what that is. Let's see. ReqRes. Okay. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. Is that ReqRes is a third-party website, not owned by Alpha or anything like that, but it allows you to create to test things. So you'll notice that you have an example web API here.
Notice I described it as it's like a sample database, but an API form.
Exactly. Yeah, like Northwinds, but online.
Right.
So you'll see I have ReqRes right here, IN, and then you'll see that I have my request, which is theirs is API users, and this is the response you should get back. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to create a new request here. I'm in, remember, this is my Restlet. This is where I can do exercise. So I'll go ReqRes. Okay. So I'm going to go here to ReqRes. I'm going to copy my URL of the company, which is ReqRes in. I'm going to go ahead and paste that here. Okay. Next, I'm going to go here and copy the request. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and copy that. If I get it highlighted, come on, it's sensitive today. Okay. And I'll paste that right there. So this is, and I'll clean it up. Okay. So that's my call. It calls the server, their API, and it's like their class, and then users. So I'm going to click send. And if this works correctly, we're getting a 200 response. And you'll notice here's the data that's coming back. Here's a record here, here's a record, very similar to us. And you'll notice their structures a little differently. They kind of have metadata and then the actual data itself. And that's what we were kind of talking about before, is when you do a call to a web service, you don't necessarily always just get the data itself. Sometimes they give you back metadata that is important for however you use that information. But at least I know this works. This little URL works here. And in fact, I can go up here and click copy as curl, and this will show me the curl command that I can use to call this service. And what curl is, for people who haven't joined us before, it's a industry standard command line program. We include it in Alpha. It's actually on our servers and on our development environments that basically pretends to be a web API. So when I call this right here, it's actually like a web page call to another, and then this system displays that information as you see right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click copy as curl, copy it. I'm going to go back into Alpha, and I'm going to go into my code, and I want to create, and I'm going to go ahead and comment this out since we're here. Okay. So I've got my curl command for that web service. There's a cool function built into this called curl command Xbasic. So I right click on the white space in my Xbasic editor, select Genie, curl command Xbasic, brings up this Genie. Now I just paste that curl command and click generate Xbasic. And much like I did with my database, now here's my Xbasic code. I can copy that. It's going to paste it in here, and I can run that. And voila, you're going to see that here's the header information, and here is that data that was here. So if I go back to here and show you what this looks like, you'll see that there's kind of header data here, and then there's the actual data below there. In Alpha now, it gave me back the header information, and now it also gave back that metadata and the actual data here. Now this is where you have to, so basically how that works is that Alpha makes all the calls. It gives it that URL I'm giving it to. And then down here, after it executes that, it gives me back my headers. Now with this content information, I can then extract the information out of that JSON, what I would like. Like if I just wanted the data itself, then I would extract it there. So that's an important thing, is when you design your APIs, you may have some metadata that you include. It depends on your requirements and other information like that. So that's a real quick introduction. Now I have a more extensive presentation on this that was about 2 weeks back, and it's been recorded. So I highly recommend, if you want to find a little bit, I went a little fast just because we have just a few minutes left. But if you are interested in finding out more on how this works, check out that webinar, because it will walk you through step by step, explain in a little bit more detail the URL, and also explain in more detail what this tool does.
Excellent. So in the questions box, I've actually pasted the URL to the video archive, the YouTube one. So if you're looking for a prior episode, that's where you find it. Another question we had was, okay, so you're showing calling REST APIs from Alpha Anywhere, and that's cool, but could you call it from the client? Could you call it using JavaScript?
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
I'm not sure if we have any genies, but absolutely, within your mobile application, you can call. And in fact, we have some really cool stuff coming down the road in Transform that'll allow you to do some of these neat things that are along those lines to integrate with web services. But for right now, we can take a note to try and create a demonstration, or I'm making a note here of client app API call. So
Yeah, that would be cool.
And actually, if I'm not mistaken, if you use the by the way, if you set up and use a ViewBox, there you go. If you use a ViewBox that's connected to a web API, then on the mobile device, I think that's server side though, so I'll have to check.
Oh, that might be, yeah.
Maybe call a server. The server might call and grab that data and then repopulate the ViewBox, whereas you want to call it directly. But I'm not sure. We'll have to look into that. So
yeah, let's do that. That'd be great.
Yeah, it'd be a good one.
To take the load off of the Alpha server can speed up the app, which is great.
Well, and that ViewBox is really, I mean, do spend some time on ViewBoxes, because I think you're going to find it's going to be a really important tool in your toolkit to build very nice interfaces. But also, as web APIs become more dominant, you'll say, oh man, I can just connect this to a web API and do a ViewBox, and it's fast, small, and works great.
Excellent. Terrific. Let's see. A bunch of people asking about videos. Maybe for the next session, we probably don't have time to cover it now, but just a quick tour of style sheet tweaking.
Okay.
Pretty good. And there was also someone asking another style question. They were in the style builder and they noticed a function called adjust colored in and adjust colored out, and they were wondering what those were for. I don't know if I've seen that myself.
I don't know.
Right.
I don't have the answer.
We'll get it for next time.
Well, you know, Dave, I don't have any style, so that's really not my thing. If I had style, I'd be able to answer that. But no,
you've got that vest, man. That vest.
Oh yeah, it's true. It's not a vest. It's called a waistcoat.
Oh, it's a waistcoat.
You cretin.
A waistcoat.
A waistcoat.
Keep a pocket watch in that, I would assume.
That's next. Although it's going to be an Apple pocket watch, which will be $3,000, but will look really cool, and we'll make sure Apple has more billions of dollars of profits.
Fantastic. Also, we had a couple people asking about what is this transform thing that I keep hearing about.
I know, we're annoying that way, aren't we?
We are. Do you want to just pop over to transform.alphasoftware.com?
Yes. You can't handle the truth.
You can't handle the truth. So what is Transform? Is a no-code system, unlike Alpha, which is a Alpha Anywhere, which is a low-code system. This is a no-code system.
Oh, do you want me? This is Transform Central, or is there a website?
Yeah, Transform Central is fine.
Okay.
For building and deploying applications for mobile devices that are data collection applications mostly. The reason we built it is as follows. We do a lot of consulting work. People come to us and say, hey, can you help me get my Alpha app built? And we found that over and over again, people were trying to build the same application. They needed some sort of data collection application. They came with a whole bunch of a list of fields, and they wanted to say, I've got this list of fields in a spreadsheet or in something, and I want to just quickly bang out an application. That's what Transform was there to do. So if you're looking for, if you have field service people who do inspections, people who, I don't know, take pictures that go into the field for any reason with a mobile device, especially a phone, but it could be a tablet, and now it can be a Windows 10 tablet as well. You can use it for very quickly building data collection apps. The data is stored in the cloud, but you can access it very easily using Alpha Anywhere. And Alpha Anywhere has a bunch of tools that are built in specifically for working with Alpha Transform data, including the API Explorer, which lets you test out all of the REST calls against Transform. You can get a free account at transform.alphasoftware.com. People had asked about pricing, so I'm going to tell you it's different than how Alpha Anywhere works. It works on a per seat basis. So it works out to about $35 per person per month who's using the system. And that's either someone who's collecting the data or somebody who is designing the forms. It doesn't really make any difference. It's still the $35 per user per month. We do have a reseller program, so if you are an independent services vendor or a VAR or something like that, we can absolutely cut you into that, and you just pass the cost along to your client. In fact, we had a webinar all about how to sell Transform if you want to start building out your business that way. If you're interested in that, send an email to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com. We think Alpha Transform is very exciting. It's actually built using Alpha Anywhere. It is, in fact, an Alpha Anywhere application, a fairly sophisticated one. But they're meant to work together. You can use Alpha Transform as a standalone solution. You can use it as part of Alpha Anywhere. You may already have an Alpha Anywhere application and you want to add some functionality. Transform is good because it is really, really drop dead simple to quickly get apps out and deployed that are running without having to do a whole bunch of testing or anything like that. They just work. So that's my quick little plug for Transform. Again, transform.alphasoftware.com. Sign up for a trial. Take a look at the Learning Center, and there's some videos. The tutorial is pretty easy. You can learn how to use the whole system in about 1 hour, unlike Alpha, where you just get started in an hour. So that's it for Transform.
Excellent.
So anyway, we've come to the end of our time. Dion, thank you very much for your presentation. Sarah, thank you as well. Appreciate that. And thanks everyone who asked questions and showed up today. If you have further questions, go ahead and send them to guides, GUIDES, at alphasoftware.com. Thanks again for attending. I hope to see you next week. Take care and have a terrific week. Bye-bye.